Welcome to Wake Up Excited. In this episode, I talk with Jessica Hische. Jessica is a creative powerhouse. She's created and illustrated children's books, designed postage stamps, done lettering for Wes Anderson movies, improved countless logos, and her new venture is invoicing and payments software for a creative professional called StudioWorks. Jessica and I go way back, and from the moment I met her, I knew we were kindred spirits. She's energetic and multidisciplinary, excitable, and is one of the few people that I really feel shares my weird blend of both sincerity and goofiness. So I loved our conversation. We discussed a lot of things. We talked about using positivity and enthusiasm to fight all the negativity engulfing our world. We talked about ADHD and mental health. We talked about balancing our personal responsibilities with our responsibilities to the world at large. We talked about engaging with and improving your local community. We talked about creativity, breadth and depth, and creativity over time, and a whole lot more. Before we get into our conversation, I wanted to say that Wake Up Excited is a real labor of love and is totally self-funded. So if you enjoy these conversations and you want to support the show, support me and my work, I'd love it if you checked out our online courses at bradfrost.com/courses. We have courses on design tokens, atomic design, with a whole bunch more on the way. And we're really committed to helping the world's designers and developers and anyone making websites and apps really level up their skills. So I'd love it if you checked out our courses at bradfrost.com/courses. Now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Jessica Hische. Jessica, hi.
Brad,
Are you ready to converse?
I am ready to converse.
What are you excited about? What has you waking up excited? What did you wake up excited this morning about?
Well, a couple of things. I went skiing this weekend and it was epic. And now I am really excited to be a skier. I skied growing up and I haven't really had a chance to go very much because I have 3 children and they have varying degrees of enthusiasm for sport. But they all 3 of them did all day lessons and they all hung out, and me and Russ got to ski all day for 2 whole days in a row. And I was feeling super cool about it. And it made me want to go out, and I'm going to buy myself skis. I'm a grown up. I don't change sizes now, so I can own skis. And I bought season passes for next year because they're super cheap if you buy them the year before. And so that's one thing. That's my life thing I'm excited about. My work thing I'm excited about is I've been building this thing called StudioWorks with my friend Chris Shiflett. And Sean and Nick are 2 super bro developer folks. And it's been epic and really fun to work on. And I feel like my brain is now, I'm like, that meme where it's like the shriveled head guy and that's bigger. And then it's like self-actualization guy. I feel like that's me. And then I launched this week a online community for it that I didn't tell anyone about before I launched it. So it was like a surprise. And that's been super fun. And there's already almost 400 people in it. And it's been really active. And we're doing like Zoom hangs and people are sharing resources and posting events and stuff. And it's really cool. I'm just really happy. So I just want to get a bunch of students in there so I can just be everybody's big sister and just be answering all their little questions.
Beautiful. You figured it out.
I know everyone's like, what do you do to mentor people? And my answer is always very wishy-washy and being like, well, I talk at conferences and I answer people's emails. And so I feel like now I can have a bit more of a direct line towards helping people, which is nice. I am also excited to just make a very casual, fun place to hang out on the internet so that it doesn't have to be in the places where everyone feels they have to be in performative mode, because there's not really good casual hangs. And, even on all the fun texty places like Blue Sky and all that, everyone's like kind of bummed out and wants to talk about being bummed out and wants to talk about being worried about stuff. And I just want to hang out and not be bummed out for a little while. That's my goal.
If I were to run my own conversations through an AI modeler and to make it sound like Jessica Hische, I would say the exact same thing as you. There's a reason why I wanted you to come on this show, because I think we're wired very, very, very similarly. I think that our conversations that have now spanned over, I think, a decade, or no, like
Well,
13, 14
probably
years now,
close
which
to
is
two
weird.
decades. Yeah.
What's wild is what you just described. I wrestle with this, and I'm curious to get your take on it, because I wrestle with it because, on one hand, everything you just described sounds almost like charmingly simple and naive. But I think we understand that there is a deep, deep level of profundity underneath all of that.
My big like ethos of the times, and has been, since 2016 basically, is we all, especially us, the like internet generation, got really excited about
Mm-hmm.
always be thinking on like a global scale, like global community, global reach, global everything. But and then when you think about problems in the world, you're always thinking like we need to attack it from like the top down. And then that just like is so intimidating and doesn't really work and mostly just makes people crumble and feel upset. And everybody forgets that actually just like the small positive things that you can do, including just like protecting your own mental health and helping other people protect theirs, that ends up making an actual difference in the world. Because people that are crushed by depressing things or full of anxiety about the state of everything, what they don't do is take any action to make it better. They just crawl into a hole and feel bad. And that's kind of the default way to do it. But if you feel like full of resources and you feel capable, you're much more likely to go, oh man, like I'm done with my work right now. What can I do to like do a helpful thing or make a thing that like impacts other people or donate to a thing or volunteer for a thing or whatever. Like you need to feel whole in order to do those things. And so I think it's actually just really important to make people focus on positive local community stuff instead of just spending all of their time looking at the big picture doom and gloom, because there's always big picture doom and gloom to look at.
Yeah. And that big picture doom and gloom is a relatively new phenomenon. Like the fact that in between all of our cat memes are slotted in pictures of a children's hospital getting bombed, and then here's another cat meme. Like like it's messed up. It's like super messed up. So we have, it's kind of no wonder why we're so scrambled up and just absolutely ripped apart mentally. And that guilt, that overwhelming crushing guilt that just is nothing but shed energy. It just vibrates out, it just burns off into the ether. That's how I view it. It's just this anxious vibrating energy that doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't do anything. It's
Totally,
fumes,
yeah.
right? It's
I mean, I
exhaust.
think we all like know people and like family members that like watch too much news, and they like see it as a positive to be so informed. But to me, it's
Yep.
like if that information is not translating to action, like what is it doing? Like if all you're doing is
Yes.
absorbing all the ills of the world and it's not translating to action, you're basically just like punishing yourself, you know? So it's almost
Yeah.
like you have to control what you let in so that you can actually still maintain the ability to do something about it. I was at an event recently called Paradiso, which is put on by one of the founders of Off. Stefan Sagmeister gave a talk there, and I've seen him talk a million billion times, but it was a talk about a recent like sabbatical project that he did called Now is Better. And he basically just, because so many people around him were talking about how we're living in terrible times and all these terrible things are happening, he decided to sort of do a research project about like what is terrible, like let's look at the data of like all of the stuff. And it
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
basically is just like now is the best possible time to exist. And the
Yeah.
thing that was really
Yeah.
interesting about it is he was on like a podcast or like news interview or something, and they were like, "Yeah, but how do people in Ukraine probably feel about that?" And he was like, "Yeah, well, but if you're being like actively bombed, obviously, like it's hard to say like now's the best time." But what ended up happening is a bunch of folks in the Ukraine reached out to him and asked him to like put on a show of this work. And he said of all of the places that the show ended up being, the best response was in the Ukraine because they just like needed hope and positivity so much.
Yeah.
And so,
Yes.
I mean, that's just
Yes.
like amazing. Like, I mean, it's one data point, but it's like really good proof that like when you're the most receptive to like hope when you're going through tough stuff, you know, like that's when you really reach for it. That's why people get religious when they get cancer and all kinds of stuff. You're like reaching out for like,
Yes.
what is the positive I can find in this?
And we need to be reminded of the other end of the spectrum. I feel like there's just been this overwhelming focus on the negative, and even in the resistance to the one side of the negative, it continues to be negative. And there's this, we need to be reminded of like the fun and the joy and the great things in life, and laughter, and all of in music, and all of these things. And we deprive ourselves, or we're like, I feel like the overwhelming majority of people are like waiting for this moment of calm to be able to claim that, or to be able to pursue that. And it's like, it ain't coming. Like and it's
Yeah.
not to say that there aren't macro level like ebbs and flows to things, but like you have to create that for yourself. No one else is going to give you permission to do that. And I feel like people like us, that is our kind of like mission or duty, is to kind of help remind people of that. I don't know if you
Yeah.
feel the same, but
Oh, totally. There's two things. One, I've been like workshopping the right way to say this quote. It stems from that thing of not being a person who's capable of actually being like an on the ground world saver. You know what I mean? Like, I have three little kids. I can't
Mhm.
go to the protests and I can't be like, doing a lot of really active stuff.
Yeah,
And I'm also like, design feels like a selfish discipline where you're just like helping people sell things, like it's all that. But the thing that I return to, which is very similar to what you're talking about, is, and this is the kind of quote that I'm working on, which is that some people are born to save the world, and some people are born to show us why the world is worth saving. And so it's like the same
beautiful.
thing of like, you need to see the beauty in the world in order to have the like fortitude to save it, and the desire to save it. Because why would you want to save a shitty place? Like you have to believe this is a good place to save it.
There's some, I love that. I love that. You good workshopping there. That no notes.
There's also, this is a weird thing, but I have a strange appreciation for social media algorithms now. Like everybody hates the algorithm and the algorithm destroys our lives and blah, 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 blah. But for me, the
Hmm.
thing that was a weird side effect of the algorithm is that the algorithm favors negativity, right? If you post about negative stuff, it's much more likely to pop to the top of the charts just because it's like people want to know about negative stuff. We just have this like innate thing of like
Yeah.
disaster looking and whatever. And what happened is in early internet, everyone saw everything that you said. So if you posted 10 things and 8 of them were positive and 2 of them were negative, people got a really good understanding about what your life was like, right? But now, if you post those same 10 things, the likelihood of people seeing the positive stuff is way less. So they're much more likely to see the negative stuff and then get a false idea of what your reality is. So it actually changes the way that you look at the things that you share, because you're like, oh, if I share these negative things too often, or, like I won't say at all, because I think it's important to share some, but it actually will
Yes.
end up not only coloring your view of your own life, but also coloring other people's view of your life. And I think that it sort of forces you into this thing of looking at all the positives and posting those. but not necessarily in like a way that needs to be about projecting a falsity. You know, it's actually about
Yeah.
projecting what is the truth, because the truth is actually that you
Yes.
had an overwhelming positive amount of stuff to say, and the negative stuff was a small
Yes.
portion of that. And so it makes you actually notice that a lot more.
You're describing an active resistance to the affordances of these algorithms, right? You're like, I will show them, and you're using it as a lens to be more conscious of your actions rather than just falling prey to the affordances of those things, which is just, yeah, the negativity snowball, and like, yeah, we're all going to dogpile on to get out there and throw an overwhelmingly unabashed, enthusiastic, positive, funny thing. That's a freaking act of resistance right there.
I feel when you say like enthusiasm too, I love that word, because one of the things that has been really interesting about becoming a grown up in the world is just the level of fucks you give dropping off. And then you also just realize that things that you felt like allergic to as a young person, when you were like trying to, like, you were like really in control, like trying to control your cool. You're like, I need to project only this certain thing, whatever. It just all goes away. And, or at least it does for the few of us that have reached that top of the pyramid. I'm feeling great. But like, oh, there were so many things that I would have seen as like dorky or cringe or whatever, that now I'm like, anytime that I get like a cringe reaction in my body, it feels like a moment where I have to do like personal work to like work through the cringe, instead of that it's about like being anti the other thing. It's actually like, I'm grateful for this, for pointing out this cringe reaction that I now have to like work through and break up, because it's bad to have that reaction. And so when I see people in the world that have like zero like cringe reaction, I'm just like, these are the ascendant humans. Like these are the ones that have made
It
it
is.
to the top. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That like the utmost sincerity. Oh my God, you love this movie that I think is this over the top, just explosion fest, big budget, whatever, but like you love that. And like I love that you love that. Like that is making you happy. And like I don't give a shit about the nature. Can I you're like the perfect person, since we're workshopping things. And it is exactly what you're describing. I have this idea for a big art installation. And in fact, one second, I got props. I went to Goodwill, live, laugh, love, give. Let everything you
Love it.
do be done in love, right? Like as letter art person, whatever. But it's exactly that level of cringe, right? We describe that shit as basic, right? Live, laugh, love, haha. It's a meme. It's a joke. And like what I've done, back to like those feelings of like, ah yeah, let's all like look at this stuff and laugh. And then like you pick at that. And it's like, what does this actually say here? It's like live, laugh, love. My God, that's like some of the most profound shit, that like it's the truth. It's right in front of us.
Yeah.
Like it genuinely is. So what I want to do is I want to do go to all these Goodwills and like round up all of the live, laugh, love stuff, and I want to do just like a giant fucking wall of it, and
I
like,
love it.
maybe do some cool stuff, like gussy it up a little bit, but it's just like, and that's the title of the piece, is with utmost sincerity. And it's just like
I love it.
recontextualizing this stuff that like fell in. Who, where did that go? Like jaded, cynical, kind of horseshitty, like let's actually let people like things. Like let's actually celebrate that. Like that's, I think, one of the most unfortunate side effects of like the first generation of like social media, is that there ended up being this like cynicism that took root, that it's like you can't actually like something, or we can't like we got to find the angle. Like, I don't like this being up here. I got to take it down a notch or two. It's like, like, who says, like, when did that
Yeah.
happen? And how do we all agree to that?
One of the things that I feel like I'm hopeful for with the younger generations that I feel like I've seen a bit of, but I don't know if it's like a regional thing, which is that it doesn't seem cool to be mean anymore. When you meet kids that are like middle schoolers or in high school or whatever, like I feel like I haven't seen a lot of like, oh yeah, they're the cool kid because they're mean. Like if someone's mean, everyone kind of has like a that person must be going through some stuff, like whatever. And I love
Yeah.
this. And I
Yeah.
hope that that's not just like a Bay Area regional thing, because obviously like I'm in a bubble. And so it's a different situation here. But I don't know, like it was so cool to be mean when we were teenagers and in our 20s. And like the mean kids always seem to like rise to the top of the pile. And if it's not cool to be mean anymore, that'd be great. That'd be so great for everyone.
It would be interesting. Like I genuinely don't know. I'm in my own little cul-de-sac bubble here outside of Pittsburgh, and all of the teenagers on our little street are like the sweetest, kindest people, and I have no idea if like that's an anomaly or if that's yeah, is that the exception or is that the rule? But I would have to think that there is some semblance of, let's say, like mental health being more of like a front and center thing that's like that's a live thing. There's like I think a lot more of like the psychology of,
Mhm.
well, positive psychology, but just an understanding of psychology in general. Like it's no longer like the first like 100 years of psychology was just all like weird Freud stuff and like all this like very like pathological stuff. And I feel like we're now living in a moment where kids are growing up with like some, like my daughter comes home from school. I'm sure your kids are the same way, where it's like there's some stuff that's just like really good emotional intelligence stuff and just like good, like holistic, like well-being kind of stuff. And my hope would
Yeah.
be that that is taught and there's more of an awareness around it, and there also seems to be a bit more of like a counter momentum swing away from like helicopter parenting a little bit, and like a real reckoning with like, hey, we kind of need kids to develop and grow and learn how to be resilient on their own rather than us trying to design that for them. So I don't know. Maybe we're just optimistic, and maybe like most places
Yeah.
are like, no, everybody's still shitty.
Yeah, they're like, no, the teenagers destroy everything, and no, which is also true. So,
I get you'll find out. You'll find out soon enough. I'll find out soon enough, and we'll report back. What's like the biggest thing that your kids have like taught you about the emotional landscape or the spiritual realm, or like what like, because the lens by which kids exist, right? And what we're
Mhm.
talking about with just like enthusiasm and positivity and boundlessness and almost like a kind of a joyful naivety. Whenever you're confronted with that every day, I say confronted, but whenever you're exposed to that every day, like that radically has changed me. I don't know like what sort of lessons you've learned from your kids.
I've got some really different personalities in my household. So my youngest
Mm,
is like, I love everything and everyone. I'm always happy about everything. I'm just here to party. Like that's his whole vibe. The thing that I learned through him, which I already know in myself because I am also this person, is that just like showing up in the world with a smile on your face makes the world better for everyone. It makes your life better and it makes everyone else's life better. Because my oldest, who is not
beautiful.
that, she definitely is much more introverted. She like straight up like will just be unresponsive to adults that are talking to her. So like if someone gives her a compliment or something, she just kind of stone faces them. And I'll like talk to her about it afterwards and be like, hey, like it's okay for you to like give a response back or like show some emotion in your face, like when people say a nice thing to you or whatever. And then she was just like, what if I don't want to? And I was like, it's totally fine, like that's on you. Uh, but she'll also like we'll go to a we went to like a craft fair or whatever, and George, who's 5, will like walk up to some lady their booth and be like, "I love the earrings you make. These are the most beautiful bracelets I've ever seen." Like and just be like really engaging with her. And then she's just like, take them all. Like she just like gives him stuff. And then Ramona will walk away and be like, how come I didn't get any free stuff? And people always give George free stuff. And I was like, because George looks at people and makes them feel good. Like if you walk up to people and make them feel nice, they want to give you things. So like, even if that's not a natural thing that you want to do, know that that is a useful tool that you can have with other people. And so that's been really interesting to sort of see that play out in like real ways. And then my middle is also a very different person. Like he's also like a big goofball and a big clown or whatever, but he's also crazy sensitive. So he's both that like introverted sensitive kid, but also like a loud performer, like always the jokester, like trying to like, be the showiest one. And it's just been really interesting to see both my and Russ's personality traits come out in different ways in them. And then also basically both of us being like, well, I guess literally everyone in the family has ADHD and just has a different flavor of it because we're just seeing like, you see what the kids are doing and what they're going through and being like, oh, that's that you have that version and I have this version. And that's why that one does that. And so it's very like the thing that's really interesting is that we feel like such a unit, like like I feel like we just like hang out and everybody gets along really well, and I think it's because we're all like just neurodivergent in our own ways, and so we all really get each other, and that's been really interesting to just like be in a household full of people that kind of all have a similar affectation. So
I mean, and that's beautiful. And like you have your flavor of that. And it's like everyone has their flavor of that, even if it's like some people I know, like entire families of curmudgeons. And it's like they're, yeah, happily curmudgeon together. And there's something there where it's like you can just have that unspoken, you all know you're built the same, you're wired the same, or you have your own, equilibrium, your own like kind of family organism kind of vibe, and you're just able to enjoy it, lean into it. I think that's beautiful. That's amazing. So yeah, you have like a real stark contrast between like unbounded enthusiasm and exuberance mixed with this like
gloomy
like
teenager basically. Yeah.
yeah. Wait till she's
We'll
an
see
actual
though. Like
teenager.
I think the main thing that's good though is that she was born in this time to these parents because I think she's also just way low on the dopamine scale and we're just going to try to level her out. And
Yeah.
so we're in the process of doing that because it's very clear that like like she's just not happy because she just doesn't have enough happy juice going on and just wants to eat candy all the time and doesn't sleep very well and is moody blues. And I just don't want her to be moody blues.
I love how you frame that because we've used like pretty much the exact same thing. It's like Melissa's in her master's program to become a therapist, an arts therapist, and like having been through what we've been through, we have like this really, acute sense of mental health and all of that stuff. And so when we notice those things that we're like, oh yeah, we're going to monitor it for now, but like eventually that's probably going to become a thing. But at the same time, it's okay. It's just it's genes and it's wiring, but it's like you could sort it out in the fact that there's this, like you said, like born at this time to these people is such a gift, and we talk about it all the time. That it's like we know not to just be like, what's wrong with you? Just, sit down and shut up. Or, like, don't be sad. Stop
Yeah.
crying. Like, it's no, like we know that there's like a lot going on, and that there are ways of being able to help and support in a way that isn't hopefully going to do lifelong damage.
Yeah. Well, I feel like too, like medication was viewed so differently in the 90s and 2000 and aughts than it is now. And it's sort of, I can compare it to like trying to do an unmedicated birth, like where you don't have you don't do the epidural or whatever. Like a friend, I tried to go about it that way with my first one, and it just like it was terrible, and I just had to lean in. And a friend of mine was like, let me just put it this way. No one ever has a second baby without an epidural. They might do it the first time, and then the second time they're like, nope, let's just go for it. And I think there's this like thing where we feel like we have to try the absolute hardest way to do something first because we see the medication as a cop out, when really it's like all of those hard things don't actually get you to, it's like a constant maintenance cycle. Like my mom also had like mental health stuff when I was growing up, and has dealt with like, she has very severe ADHD clearly, but she's undiagnosed, and had a bunch of depression, all kinds of things. And she was like, yeah, the only thing that worked for me was like intensely exercising for 2 to 4 hours per day. And I was like, who can do that? Like there are things you can do to like solve the problem, like
Right.
mostly where you can get yourself like 70 to 80% there. But it involves like gargantuan lifestyle changes that don't necessarily
Yeah.
mesh with modern life or having a job or having kids and all that. And so you do what you can to like mitigate things, but also like I feel like people just cut themselves off from the ability to actually like solve these problems in a much more like easy way
Yeah.
by just like
Yeah.
trying out rebalancing your brain chemicals, because
Yeah.
I think there's just this
Yeah.
whole thing of like, yeah, I mean, I thought for sure it was going to totally change my personality or something. And I just feel like, oh my God, look, I'm like back to being my best self that I was like before I started having crazy hormone problems, or like my best self when I wasn't being triggered by anxiety and was getting great sleep and was doing whatever. I'm not getting great sleep, but my brain is
Yes.
like in the same place as if I am. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's you are healthier. It's like it is the analogy I use is it's eyeglasses, right? And coming back to the exercising 2 to 4 hours, it's like, yeah, well, I might not need glasses if I just redesign my entire life to make it so that I could just kind of see things. If I just sort of stand so far away, and if I like
And squint
don't,
a
if I
certain
read the
way.
paper
Yeah.
this way, and like yeah, and put this on my car and a big magnifying glass on my, like it's like, or just get some eyeglasses. But it's like there's an uneven understanding and appreciation for what this class of drug, it's very misunderstood. It's very stigmatized still, or whatever. The stigma part I don't understand. The misunderstood part is fully understandable, because even the people that make this stuff, they're like, how do SSRIs work? They're like, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay,
Something happens.
like they're like,
Yeah.
we have our theories, like we think it's this. So it's like I understand maybe like a lack of understanding, but the more like stigma around it, it feels generational. It feels there's a lot wrapped up in it, but at the same time, I'm hopeful back to like the younger kids. I think that it's not just like slamming Ritalin in their mouth anymore, just as a, you know, settle down kind of thing. It seems like more deliberate and designed and whatever. But
I'm slamming Ritalin and it's great. And so, like the main thing being I didn't understand how, like, and I it feels weird to like go and get my medicine now because it's a controlled substance and it's a big fucking pain in the butt to get my prescription filled. Like every time
I
I
hate
go to
it.
the
That's the
pharmacy,
worst part.
I hate
Yeah.
it. I have to call in every month and there's always shortages, but I can't ask the pharmacy if they have it because they're not allowed to tell me. So sometimes I have to call, like, my doctor has to send in prescriptions to like 8 different pharmacies until I find one that has it. But it even feels like then, like, I'm like, do you know what this does? Like, all that it does is make me not a hummingbird. Like, that's all that it does. Like, if I feel like I'm in a yoga class all day when I'm on it. And when I'm not on it, I'm like, ooh, what about that? Ooh, what about that? We should do that. Ooh, we should do that. And it's just like non sequitur, jump, jump, jump. I get that if you're not like us or me, then it makes you psychotically wired. But like, I get way crazier of a wiry effect from caffeine than I do from Ritalin. Ritalin does not make me wired at all. I don't get wired. But like if I have 2 cups of coffee, I'm like crazy buzzy.
It's so weird how it hits everybody differently too. And my doctor was like, she's like, this, because I'm on Adderall XR, and she's like, and we recently we're playing around with putting like a second dose in. This might keep you up all night, or you might sleep better than you've ever slept before, or maybe it has no change. And it's just like, okay, sure, that's fine. But I like what you're saying, that there is there's like a clarity in your natural tendencies. Because like it's not like a diminishment, right, of your skills. And I want to kind of pick at that too, because like it's been so fun just kind of watching you from afar. Because like we kind of like, whatever year that was, like let's say like late 2010, let's call it, I don't know, and we're kind of at like the same spot. We're both like, you know, let's go, and then
Making
like we're
stuff.
all
Let's
kind
do
of
stuff.
doing
Yeah.
our things. Yeah. Yeah. But like that making stuff and making varied things in different kinds of things, right? And this is like it's an interesting thing that I'm sure you've heard about, but I'm curious to get your take on it as someone who has really benefited from that. Hummingbird approach to things is a gift, right? It's like it's a gift so long as it doesn't get in the way. And that's what the medicine, in my view, like for me personally, the medicine keeps the hummingbird moving towards actual feeders that have actual nutrients in it, versus just like flitting around going here, there, and everywhere. It's like it's a focusing effect, but it doesn't diminish the spirit.
Yeah,
I
to
don't know if you
me,
feel the same.
I no, I feel the same way. I think the one thing is in losing the hummingbird brain, I do lose a bit of the like this. If I'm like on a real tear, like every now and then I would basically get in like a manic creative tear where I could just like have a billion ideas flying at me, and a lot of them were like worth pursuing, or they were all contained within the same thing. But that
Mm,
happens so rarely that it's not worth living my life for that. You know what I mean? Like
sure.
when
Yep. Yep.
in the prior days, when I could be in control of my own time, I would just like hop from project to like keep the enthusiasm going. And so like the whole working thing was basically just a big ADHD coping mechanism. But now that
Yeah.
I'm a parent and my work days are more contained, and it's a little unpredictable about whether or not I can go into that hyper focus mode or not. I need to make sure that when I'm
Hmm.
at my office that I'm not being diverted, because the diversions aren't helpful anymore. Like those are really helpful when you're working like 14 hours a day and you can just like divert
Yes.
and then divert and then divert. But when you're only working for like 6 to 9 hours a day, then the diversions are like an absolute wrench thrown into the whole thing. And so, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and also too, like the other thing that I found is like is similar to the 4 hours of exercise thing. Like my thing is I am so much less anxious if I can just like be in perpetual motion, like working on stuff, like that I always have something to do. I'm a very busy person. I just have to like keep busy, keep moving forward like a shark, like just have to keep moving. Otherwise, I feel like I'm going to die.
Hmm.
And when I don't have the capacity to do that all the time, my anxiety builds up. And so and that's because all that energy that I would have been spending on all of those outlets is building up and doesn't have a place to go. And so
Yep.
the taking a stimulant, like taking the Ritalin, what it does is it dissipates that energy that's built up. And so I think like if I could live, like there's probably a world in which I'm no longer on stimulants when I'm not so on top of the kids or traveling or like whatever. Like if I could
Sure.
just do what I want all the time, I probably don't need it as much. But I feel like now what it really does is just help that energy disperse so that that doesn't turn into horrible anxiety. Cause like that's what it feels like to me. And a friend of mine was like, because I was kind of back and forth about whether or not I should try stimulants. And she was like, dude, don't sleep on how much it can impact anxiety. Like if you're like an anxious person, it had the biggest impact for me in terms of anxiety, more so than taking SSRI, SNRI. And I found that to be really true. Like, you know, like I definitely feel like
Yeah.
that SNRI, what that does is kind of like not have me in these weird, like false reality shifts where I like have a false belief about what's going on. Cause like every now and then you kind of like have that sort of like, wait, what was that about? You know, like those kind of feelings. And those just don't happen anymore. And I think it's because I'm like way more leveled out because of the SNRI. But in terms of just that like low hum of anxiety that kind of builds and builds and builds,
Yeah.
the stimulants are what
Yeah.
knock that out. Like if I'm feeling kind of like
Yeah.
ugh, in the afternoon and I take a little boost of the Ritalin, I'm just like, ah, now I feel good. Now I can do stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. That was very descriptive. Like I was following along. It's like that articulation of your inner energy levels. It's like, and again, like every body is different, and I think that that's always like something that's like worth pointing out. And that's yet another thing that I get frustrated with when it comes to people talking about mental health is that they're like, "Hey, I tried that," or even like therapy and stuff. They're like, "Yeah, I tried that and didn't work." And it's like, well, hang on. Like it's like this binary kind of thing. It's like you
Yeah.
do have to find the equilibrium with anything, right? Like it's all about sort of balances and iterating over things in order to get to a place where you're like feeling like your optimal self. And you owe that to yourself, right? Like again, like I feel like a lot of the conversations that I have with people that are skeptical or pushing back on that are like, they're like, no, but I like want to stay in that like low hum anxiety state, or I want to feel like that energy's building up with nowhere to go. And you're like, but do you? Like it's like what are you
Well, you
holding on
know,
to?
it
Like what are you
depends.
trying to
If the way that it works for them is that they're making themselves a coiled spring and then they have a place to release that coil, great. Then yeah, I mean that's when it does feel like a superpower because it's like that energy
Sure.
builds up and then you just constantly are outputting it. But once you get older and you don't have the capacity to do that as much anymore, yeah, I mean it's like a different thing. And with therapy, it's also like therapy as an adult is so hard because our brains are like rigid stone structures, right? We've like built these pathways over and over and over again. We've walked the same routes over and over again in terms of our thought patterns. So trying to like unmake those walkways is so fucking hard. It's like you're on a trail in the woods and there's a trail that has been walked for centuries and you're now starting to walk down a slightly different trail that has not been walked for centuries. And of course, everything wants to divert down the centuries long path for a
Yes.
very long time. And it just takes so much time to build that new path. And that's why, like, the
Yes.
whole psychedelic assisted stuff is really cool because it does allow you to, like, make those deep new pathways much quicker. Yeah, I mean, like, I loved therapy, but it took 4 years to, like, unmake some
Yeah.
bad mental pathways of behaviors. Like, it was the slowest, most arduous, most not noticeable thing in the whole world. And it worked. And it's like because I did it, it's going to stick because I did the hard thing and the
Yes.
pathways are there
Yeah.
versus trying to like race to a
Yes.
good answer and then it can just bounce right back to the old ways. But it's I mean, who can commit to that? It was like $175 a week for 4 years. That's like, you know, it's like
Yeah.
5 or 6 grand a year. You know, like it's not nothing. Like not everybody can
Right,
do that.
right. And again, there's very uneven results. And it's funny you brought up the psychedelic speak. Whatever you're talking about, the 2 to 4 hours of exercise accomplishing the same thing. It's like that's immediately where my head went. Is it's like, oh yeah, you could do years of talk therapy or going to meditate these intensive multi-day meditation retreats and spend a year long like years long practice. It's like, or there's this way that will help you jump those neural canyons a lot fast.
I wish I could have stuck doing more psychedelics because I did see this like outrageous benefit when I first started doing it. It's like I was so flat, like not like depressed, but just kind of like everything just felt like a slog, like just everything. I was just like,
Mm.
ugh, like the kids ask you to play outside and you're like, ugh, like the first reaction is, no, thank you. I just want to sit here and do my own thing instead of like, wow, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a beautiful day, like whatever.
Yeah.
And when I started doing mushrooms pretty regularly, I was just like, does anyone know how gorgeous trees are? Like just even when I wasn't like in that space, it just kind of filtered out into my whole life. I was just full of wonder all of a sudden. And I would have been keep doing them, but I had this issue. I don't have like the best memory because I think I went through some like tricky, yucky stuff when I was a teenager, and I just like don't have great recall for a lot of my like young memories. But I have incredibly vivid dreams almost all the time. Like my dreams are very real, and I do a lot. I know that I'm dreaming sometimes, where I can be like, in the dream, and I feel like I'm just watching it like a
Lucid
movie.
dreaming. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, it's like lucid dreaming. I don't necessarily have control in the dream, but I'm like aware that I'm dreaming. And it's just because my sleep is like so yucky that I'm sort of in REM a lot. And what happened from the mushrooms, and this wasn't like while on mushrooms, this just happened for like weeks following, is that my brain started to mix in memories and details of memories into my vivid dreams. So then I couldn't tell if the dream was like a thing that happened or if it was a dream. And that felt really scary. And so I was like, I need to stop doing this. And that's when I went on SNRIs instead. I was just like, regular medicine is also great for managing your mental health. And
Regular
let's do that
medicine.
instead.
That's fascinating. Do you feel that those experiences, though, have had a staying power, though? Or like, are there like lessons learned from that phase that when you like look at the trees now?
I think like there were a couple of experiences that I had that were really good. I never like had like a proper trip. Like I only a couple of times got to the place of seeing like some visuals, like kind of like holographic lettucey world, which was great. But I think it's more I think it was more like understanding that I was capable of joy, like that kind of joy again, and it didn't have to be because of like getting a little, like having a little bit too much alcohol and feeling that like tipsy, like extroversion thing. I was like, oh, like this is like straight up joyful wonder. And the fact that you can experience that as an adult is amazing. And I was like, I need to figure out how to have more of that, like however that happens. Because I think you kind of forget, because like kids are always like, that's crazy, like for everything. And you're like, yeah, 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 you just don't know
Yeah.
yet. Like, but yeah, I mean, it was, I do think that that stuck with me. I think it made me feel like prioritizing that was a real priority, like that
Mm.
finding that
Mm.
was something I really needed to focus on. It's sort of that thing of like
Yeah.
when stuff's going weird mentally, you don't really realize that it wasn't good until you're out of it. And then you're like, oh wow, that was actually
Yes.
worse than I thought that it was, like, and so once you're out of it, you
Yeah.
have much more perspective. And it's always so hard to know because it's such a slow build to get to like the bad part. And I think a lot of us get to a part that's bad, but we're still functional. Like you're still totally capable of like doing work and taking care of your kids and doing whatever. It's just you're just like a robot doing those things. It's just you're going through the motions and
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
doing stuff because it makes you stoked. You're just doing it because it's like another thing on your calendar. And yeah, and it was really nice
Yeah.
to get out of that mode.
That's great. And I think that that's really well said. And whether psychedelics or other ways, I think that there are ways that adults can find that perspective and evaluate, get outside of the normal neural canyons, that normal path through the woods that we take. And frankly, I think like as I've grown older and reconnected with things like music and art, I'm like, oh, that's what that is for. That's what it's for. Like, I always was like, oh, I like to make pictures and I like to make music, and that's fun. And now what I'm realizing with, especially like kind of coming out of COVID, going to those like first concerts post COVID, when you are taken to that place, that same place that you're describing with psychedelics, and it's like it is a real presence, it is a real joy. There's a sense of connectedness, there's a sense of elevation, there's a sense of like we're all standing in this room together, sharing this experience. And after being robbed of that for several years, that that hit me like a ton of bricks. And just like you're saying, to focus there is, I mean, why we're talking now on this the show that's kind of like dedicated, I think, to this attitude. And it's like there's a real importance that I think people need to be reminded of, and that's what the arts are for. That's what these things that aren't part of your just everyday lived experience, that running through the motions, that is where the trap can lie, even for creative professionals like us, like, or for people that like we flex these muscles more than a lot of people. But it's like, yeah, I mean, it's such like a trope, but at the same time it's like, yeah, people get in their car and they go commute to work, and then like the next thing you know, like 15 years pass them by and they're just like, wait, what was I doing, right? And that's where I think that those, why the arts are so important. And there are other ways to it, but I do feel like there are these just different modalities or different ways of jolting us out of our normal routine that end up being that kind of shift off of the normal walking path and into a place, or at least has us reevaluating or evaluating, like, wait, why am I on this path? Am I enjoying this journey, or does this just feel, do I feel stuck, or do I feel like, do I feel okay, or do I feel great? And kind of bringing this all back to like the people sort of like bathing in the guilt and bathing in the despair and in the doom scrolling and all of that stuff. You don't get that time back. You don't get that time back. And as the days have turned into months, have turned into years, and are now turning into decades, the people waiting for permission to reclaim that joy and reclaim happiness, it's like you lost it. Like you allowed yourself to lose, at this point since 2016, almost a decade of your life to uh, other people's shitty attitude and other people's shitty ways of being. And I get it. It's like, it's bad, it's wrong, and whatever. There's a lot of concerning things. And that's, I think, maybe something I'd love to like pick at with you is, it's like, because I fall into this trap a little bit, or not a trap, but like something that I try to reconcile, is that this kind of positivity, optimism, hope, all of the good things that we've been talking about can come across as like dismissive or uncaring for the real hard things happening in the world, happening in society, happening even in our own lives, right? And it's like, I know that isn't true. And I could feel it in my bones that it's not true, that I care very deeply about all of this stuff. In fact, I feel that this is, as we've already kind of covered, it's like this is an important way to fight that. But like, I'm curious if you feel that at all, like where it's like this, like you feel so juxtaposed against the negative that it almost feels like,
I get what you mean. I think what I would say to that is, I think everybody has their fight to fight. Like everybody has the cause that lights the fire within them, you know? And whatever that is for
yeah,
each person is going to be super different. Like some people are kicked up about women's rights. Some people are kicked up about immigrant rights. Some people are kicked up about Ukraine. Some people are kicked up about Palestine. Like everybody's got their thing that has triggered them, that has like lit the fire in them of like, this is my thing. This will not stand. I must be for this thing. And I think it's just important to remember that each person has the cause that they are the most excited to fight against, you know? And so I think with like the
Yes.
positivity thing, the biggest thing for me is focusing on local, immediate community stuff. Because I think that like my big thing right now is that like all of this work from home post COVID stuff has like destroyed all local businesses. You know, like it's just had such an
Yep.
immense impact of local communities, of how people get together, of people's connectivity to each other, and all that I want to do, because I know I can have an immediate impact that not only makes other people's life better, but it makes my life better and it makes my kids' life better by just being way more engaged in my local community and trying to create initiatives around getting the local community to like be more connected and involved. And then what happens then from that is that like local communities stand strong against larger communities, against the largest communities. So like that's why it can feel really good to be in California, because everybody in California just sort of agrees like, hey, fuck all that. Like we, if we have to, we'll just be an island unto ourselves. And you just kind of have this understanding that we all are in this and that we are not going to let that corrupt us or whatever. And it has to do with the fact that this smaller community feels aligned against this bigger bad thing, you know? And I think
Yes.
that's where I'm at. But like everybody is really different, you know, like if you have a family member that's been personally affected by something, if you have been personally affected by something, you're going to have a really different approach to like how to deal with all this. And I think the thing that gets tricky is when people try to assign a value scale to the things that people are upset about or are kicked up about or care about.
Yeah.
You know, like by saying, oh, well, you're not putting all your effort into this other thing that is way more important. Therefore, what you're doing doesn't have value. And that's just not true. You know, like you are going to be the most effective when fighting the fight that you care about. And so, like, don't try to fight the fights that you don't all the way care about right now. You still care about them, but they're just not the top fight. And so just we only have so much time. And so you have to just pick the fight that you're going to win. So pick the fight that you're ready to fight.
Yeah, it's really well said, and I think that that's a really important reminder for people, because I think that there's kind of a narrative out there. There's the, if you're not outraged by this, then you're part of the problem, and like all of that stuff. Like that's a very, very dangerous mentality and stuff. And the fact of the matter is that there there is only so much of you. There's only so many hours in the day. If you are committed yourself fully to, you know, gun control or women's rights, that means that you're not committing your full self to preservation of coral reefs. If you're preserving the coral reefs, that means that you're not fighting gun control. Like, there is only so much of you, but like, because we are just inundated and it's just so loud and so noisy, and I think it's a lot of that sentiment is coming from a place of, I feel this in my body, I feel this in my soul, I know this to be important. And that sentiment is a reflection of their reaction to it. So it's understandable, but it's not understandable to expect other people to do it. But it's like, so that my take on it is, it's like everyone has to do their own work, and that often involves taking a step away from the noise machine in order to reconnect with their values and what their life experience and what their skills and unique gifts and passions and enthusiasms are. And then you will have a greater sense of clarity and purpose to be able to sort of move the needle forward. And the surprising and kind of cool thing is that there will be byproducts of that that will end up rippling out into these other fields. Like, if it's all grounded in love, ultimately, like, these things are interconnected. These, all of these systems, all living things are interconnected, and that, like, it really does require all of us moving and hitting things from our respective angles to make a difference, to show up. Like, if we all pick a lane, it means that the rest of the lanes atrophy and bad things happen. So it really does require this idea of I was just talking to somebody that the word, I don't even know if it's real, but virtuistic plurality is what we're describing here. Is this like show up? There is a pluralism to how we show up, and we can all sort of express our virtues. We can all build love. We can all build community. We can all help in our own ways, and that like your way is going to be different than my way, and that's okay so long as we're all building good things together. Like that's it. And I think we can appreciate that. Like we can learn to appreciate that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things too is that it's really difficult to make big changes for one organization or one person to make really big changes. Because I was having a conversation with someone about this, about like initiatives on a city level, or like, you know, stuff that's meant to like address like really systemic problems. But the issue is that it takes a lot of people a lot of time to come up with a plan. And then they have to start rolling out the plan, and they roll out the plan bit by bit. But as they're rolling out the plan, there's other groups that are going, this plan isn't happening fast enough. We're going to put together another new plan of how to address this system. And then everyone goes, you're right, that's not happening fast enough because 5% of that first plan has only rolled out. So then a new plan goes into place that then starts from zero. And what happens is when people do this, when people try to always address it from the top down, they're putting forth these huge systemic changes and only getting 10 to 15% done. And then all of a sudden, everybody has a big rebellion and says not enough is happening. So it never gets to 100%. Whereas if you just tackle small
Yep.
problems bit by bit and just work through them, you can actually get stuff done. And so, like, I think that's another thing to remember, is like that all this stuff that we're talking about is just about like taking action now and setting yourself up in a way to take action. You know, like building up your personal reserves, getting yourself kicked up about a thing, doing a thing that you can have immediate impact on, even if it's small, and understand that many small things equals one big thing. You know, because a lot of times when you try to do one big thing,
Yeah.
it's really difficult to roll out that whole thing because people always want to come up with the new big thing. They want to be in charge of the new big thing. They want, you know, like everybody's got different ideas of what the new big thing should be. And it's just really hard to do that. And you just see it over and over again where people have these really grand plans and they never get a chance to actually actualize them because everyone's impatient, and by the time they start rolling it out, other people are like, well, clearly this wasn't working, we've got to rethink it all.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. And I can't help but think like that our media landscape contributes to that. It's like again, like the woes of the world are showing up to our screens 24/7. And so we feel like we need to react and act in equal measure, which is, oh yeah, we got to solve these big wicked problems. And wouldn't you know it, I feel guilty and like I'm incapable of doing it. It's because you are, right? You are incapable of
Yeah.
solving these big wicked problems, right? So it's like we have to like reframe our reactions and our response to these like macro level things with, I like how you're saying it, just like this, just these really like kind of focused and immediate and actionable things. That is what any human single person can do. It's beautiful. It's great.
Yeah.
We need more of it.
Agreed. Agreed.
How have you felt that your ambitions and priorities have changed? We've already kind of like talked about it with like the kids and stuff, but even just into this more like purposeful stuff, like there's kind of like different seasons of our career and life and stuff. Like how have you felt things shift for you, and how do you like feel about it? Do you feel like a loss, or do you feel like it's just inevitable and you're rolling with it?
I feel like I've been really able to recalibrate like every few years based on what I want my life to be like and what my interests are. So for me now, my big focus is sort of it's really like the big focus now is how do I set myself up financially so that I can do more things that are more fun, like both work wise and life wise, you know, mostly work wise, because a lot of the higher paying projects are you working in a silo. It's for like a big commercial thing or whatever. And the more fun things are things that don't always pay the best, things that are more like collaborations than they are client projects, or volunteerism through design and work and that kind of thing. And I feel like I always want to do those things, but have a hard time balancing it against needing to earn an income for my family and stuff like that. So just really trying to figure out the way to make it so that I can do more of those things in 5 years and I can make more of my life's focus around that, like that it's not just about like donating money to local organizations and more just about like, what can I do to actually do things like, can I turn Studio Works into have a nonprofit where like I take my salary and anything that goes beyond that goes into a nonprofit that goes towards local arts organizations or towards, grants or whatever, like a way to help sustain everybody else. I feel pretty strongly
Yep.
about like local retail and things like that and how difficult it is. It's like just almost impossible. It would be amazing to just like be able to have some sort of program to help people do small scale retail, because knowing that it's not really a big moneymaker, that it's just like a thing that you have to do, or like if you want to do it, it's not meant to be like your next career because it's really difficult to succeed at. But that those things are really
Yes.
amazing for local culture and also just for personal reasons. And so I don't know, just like I want to figure out a way to like take all the skills that I've learned and resources that I have and help other people with them. But I also know that I need the financial ability to do that. And I don't want to be reliant on other people. Like I don't want it to be like setting up a thing
Yeah.
where there's donors and then board members and blah, blah, blah. Because I like it just,
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just feel like people with lots of money always screw things up. So, I don't know.
Yeah. It's true. But I love what you're saying. It's like, and this is a really interesting, we'll say, theme that's emerging on this, is something that I spent a lot of time thinking about as well, where it's like, like money is a tool, right? And what you're describing is like money in this sense is a platform, is a way for you to provide stability to your family, and you want to like almost like tick that box so that you could free up your mental, spiritual energy to do more worthwhile things. It's money is a tool in that respect that can be wielded to unlock many good things.
Absolutely. Because I think too, like it just depends on how you're using it, because like like if you
Mhm.
think about how to effectively use money to do stuff, like there's certainly like the city of Oakland, which is where my studio is not a very well organized city in general. I think I can say that without getting everybody upset. And part of it is like they end up having to charge they have to charge they charge a lot, they have to charge a lot for things like permits to do things or whatever, to like make up for the fact that they just like bleed money over all sorts of stuff. So it's just like there's certain
Sure.
organizations where like more money does not equal more effectiveness, and actually like
Yes.
figuring out how to like use money in a smart way is really important and is really difficult to do. And so I think like I want to focus on things like that, whereas I feel like there's like plenty, I mean, there's tons of organizations that you can donate to and they use the money in excellent ways and it's very useful. And so I'm
Hmm.
not knocking nonprofits and charities and stuff that already exist. I'm just saying
Sure.
that like if you're thinking about direct contributions to people, there's probably some really smart ways to set that up where it actually does have like a really big short-term impact on both them and the community. Like one of the things that I was thinking about doing, and this is sort of a down the line pipe dream in terms of doing something that's a more nonprofit thing, is setting up a fund that people can apply to host local events, like community events. So it's basically like you get
Oh
a
yeah.
grant to do a community event, which then unlocks the community in terms of their like presence with local retail and other restaurants and all that kind of stuff. So it's less
Yep.
about like giving money to a person to do a thing and more about like if you are doing a community related event, we will help you file all your paperwork and we will give you money to like set to do rentals and permits and like whatever. Like that kind of thing. So it's like thinking about ways where the money goes towards something that's very immediate and actionable and has ripple out impact on the other local businesses and not just on
Yeah.
that one person's business.
Right. Right. It's like, here's this thing that's like prohibitive right now because it's harder than it needs to be, or just like out of the budget of like a normal community. So it's just like, here's just like this little push to just like get the ball rolling on it, and then you end up with this beautiful ripple effect of people kind of taking it and rolling with it. That's great. But I guess like kind of like back to, let's say, like personal finances. So hard agree with all of that stuff, and that sounds great, and I'm looking forward to you making that. But also, like, when it comes to like your like personal financial situation, and it's like, okay, you got a family, and there's that kind of like balancing act that tends to happen, where it's like, okay, like, what's our obligation to provide stability for our own family versus like the world at large and community at large. And obviously, like, as your financial situation changes, so does that balance, right? But I like what you were saying earlier, because it's almost like it's not even about like the money, like where do I point my money. I think you're really describing like, where do I point my energy, and how could I free up my energy by way of just kind of like taking care of my personal financial situation, getting that almost kind of out of the way, so that you're free to be able to exercise your and point your energy to these really important projects, right? That maybe it's not that you can't trust other people with your money, but it's like, no, you have ideas, you have gifts, you have skills that you want to bring to the table.
You've been part of groups and organizations and all kinds of things before where you know that like the main thing is just getting people to follow through. Like everyone's got a lot of ideas and very few people want to follow through. And part of it is because everybody is just
Yeah.
too busy, like they got too much shit going on. And that's kind
Yep.
of what happens. And
Yep.
so I think like while I have the energy to do stuff, like I'm 40, I feel like I'm going to have a lot of energy until I'm like 55 or 60. And then I'm still going to have energy, but it's going to start to taper. I just feel like I've got these like 2 decades of proper go get 'em energy. And then I just want to do as much as I can during that time. I want to be the person who makes a suggestion and then actually tries to do it. Not the person who just like talks about
Yeah.
it and tries to get someone else to do it that is not as
Yeah.
invested as me or whatever. And that's really what it
Yeah.
is like it's not I'm saying that I can do it better than someone. It's just like very few people have the ability and that attitude and the tenacity to actually do stuff. And I know that I'm one of those people, just because I love just hammering away at a thing and making it happen. It's like, it's really thrilling to me. And so I want to make myself more, I want to be like, I want people to be able to use me in an effective way. I want to be a resource to people,
Yeah.
like if they have a thing they want to do, I'm like, how do we do
Yes.
it? Let me help you do it. And, but I do need to make sure that we're not like freaking out financially as a family, like, because you can't do that. You can't like give yourself to other people if you're not taking care of the people that you're in a house with. And so that doesn't mean that I need to
Yeah.
have like crazy trust funds for the kids or whatever, but it means that I should probably start their college funds. Like, one of them is 10 this year. So it's probably time to start a college fund, and like, not that it has to be all the way saved or anything, but that before I divert a lot of energy into another space, I probably have to make sure that my kids aren't complaining about me in therapy, in 10 years time.
But yeah, I think that's well said, and I think that really like hits at it's like well-meaning, altruistic. It's kind of always feels weird to be seemingly selfish, but it's like, after it's all said and done, it's like you do need to take care of your family. Like, that is the most important thing you could do. And that's ultimately like a good thing for society writ large and for your community, that you are taking care of your family and your kids. There's kind of like a reframing of like the selfishness, but yeah, 100% right. It's like there's a difference between that level of kind of pragmatic, like, I've got mouths to feed and kids to put through college, and they have a trust fund and we have a yacht and whatever.
Exactly. I think people have a hard time parsing the difference between wanting to have a decent retirement fund just in case. Like I don't plan to retire. I plan to work as long as I humanly can because my work is fun and enjoyable. But who knows? I mean, what if I like get physically disabled and I can't do that anymore? Like you have to like
Yep.
set yourself up. Like, what if one of us ends up being a solo parent because something tragic happens to the other person? What if one of the kids
Yep.
has a problem? Like, you just don't know. I mean, like all kinds of stuff can happen. So there always has to be buffer. But there's a real difference between like being practical and safe and planning for like potential hardship that might happen or might not happen versus like hoarding like money and sitting on top of a pile
Sure.
of emeralds. Like it's a very different thing. Like
Right.
at a certain point,
Right.
everybody
Right.
will be fine. Like you can just start giving it away. Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, just getting to the point where everyone would be fine if I got knocked out or if Russ got knocked out or if one of the kids got knocked out or like whatever. Just like getting it to the point where we'd survive as a family, we wouldn't have to go bankrupt. We'd be able to like take care of a big problem that happened and it wouldn't be an incredible hardship. That's all that I want. And then anything, once we have those
Yeah.
assurances, anything beyond that, that doesn't need to get saved up. That's fine. That can go towards cool, helpful things.
That's great. I want to touch on something, and then looking at the time, we should probably wrap up soon. But I really like what you're describing. You've done it a couple times. You've put yourself 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, and also saying, yeah, I just want to work for as long as possible. How do you think about that? And also like how in that same lens of like the longevity of your life and creative life, the breadth and depth of that creativity, like you've already turned over a lot of stones in the creative realm, which is awesome. um and I guess like how do you see that breadth and depth? Like how do you describe that, and how do you like see that changing in the coming decades?
Yeah, I think I've been much more of a designer and commercial artist because for most of my life, I have felt like I've needed permission to make things. Like I need a brief, I need someone asking me to solve a problem. And that makes me excited and gives me permission to make stuff. And so it's kind of a mix of that. And then also coming up with my own things, which usually have to do with me learning a little bit of a new skill and wanting a way to practically apply that skill or trying to like work in a certain way or think a certain way. And so it's like projects end up being the way that I'm like, oh, I really like doing this one thing. So I'm going to come up with a way that I can do that thing for a while. And so that all
Mm-hmm.
is still going to exist. But I think like I do want to be a person who can like loosen up a little bit more in terms of how I create and, like try new things and get a little sloppy and get a little bit more experimental and maybe like exist in the world as a bit more of an artist and a bit less as a commercial artist designer. I don't know when and if that'll happen, if it'll ever happen. Like maybe things will just totally keep shifting and I'll just keep getting more and more like problem solving and pragmatic and whatever. Like who knows? But that's one path that it could go down. I'm not sure. I also would love to teach more because I like being around young people and uh, that's fun. Like I love that. And I haven't been able to do that because I just have been too busy and haven't been able to pin down and whatever. So I would love to do that more as I get older and that would be really fun. Um, Also just like hoarding maker equipment and doing a lot of stuff with that and letting other people use all my maker equipment. That's big. Like Russ wants like to get some sort of workshop space at some point when he doesn't have to work in tech anymore so that we can just like accrue a bunch of maker shit and just like let people use it. Um I don't know. I feel like my thing for my whole career has just been about helping people, both myself and other people, helping them get unstuck and getting them excited to like make stuff and not feel like it needs to be this whole intimidating thing. And I feel like that's just going to translate
Yeah.
into different things as I get older. Like whether that's like I'm doing it through money ways by setting up like scholarships or like whatever, or whether I'm doing that through youth programs or through arts programs or through like having a maker space that people have access to or like whatever. It's just about like how do I break down the friction to making stuff for everyone and for myself, you know? Like I think that's kind of the biggest thing. So I think that's just going to
Beautiful.
always be, that's just always going to be part of it, you know, and it's just going to have different forms, you know, it's just going to take different shapes as I get older.
Yeah. 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 It's like that's the winning formula that you've already demonstrated in many realms, and to just point that formula at different things and open up doors for more people to make things. That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Well, to bring it back to the kid convo too, I've been one of the things, and you can validate this because it's 100% true. Whereas like people are born exactly who they are, right? You know, like they come into this world and they are fully formed people. And so my big thing about parenting is the only thing that you can do to impact your kids is to either add friction or remove friction on the path of who they're becoming, right? So as a parent, you're either throwing things in their path and preventing them from taking that path, and they have to go around your obstacles to get to where they're ultimately going to be, or you're actively removing the things that are in their path for them and helping them through that. And I think that like having that approach to parenting and understanding that like people are whoever they're going to be and everybody has different blocks, and the whole thing is identifying those blocks and helping them move them out of the way, you know, like whether I can physically move
Yeah.
them out myself or I can show them how to move it out, and like that's the whole thing. And so I think it's like it's both like a parenting thing but then also just like a general creative life thing, is that like identifying that we're all on a different path and everybody's got different blocks, and that we can actually go and help remove those blocks or teach people how to push their own blocks aside, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm sure you get it all the time. It's like, how do I do what you do? And it
Yeah.
like, yeah, younger people or people that look up to you, and it's like how do it's exactly what you described with your kids. It's like you have your own version of this. It's not going to look like me. You're not going to be me. You're going to be you, and you have no choice but to be you,
Yeah.
right? So best get to it, right?
Yeah. That's why that's like the thing that's
Oh,
kind of funny
amazing.
is like the whole idea of like a family business, you know? Like if you think about passing down your family business to your kids, it's like that's just assuming that they're built just like you if they're going to have the same role as you. Whereas, like, they like the
Yeah.
reason why family businesses don't always last multiple generations is because you're basically having your kids fall into a role that they're not necessarily built for. But if the idea of the family business is, hey, this is the thing I've built, what role in it could you have? You know, like what would get you excited that would make you want to participate in this? That's a totally different thing. You know, like it's not all about, you know,
Yeah.
handing down the ownership. It could just be about handing down part of it that they get excited about. You know, so I don't know. I think it's just very interesting, and it's fun to model like a lot of the things. Like that's my favorite thing too, is just like living my life how I hope that the kids live their life. You know, if they see me working after hours and make a comment about how I'm working a lot, I'm like, I'm only working right now because I really love what I'm doing. Like, you know, I'm just really excited about this thing. So I just can't stop
Yeah.
working on it because I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
And so I'll just be like,
Yeah.
I hope that you're excited about a thing to the point where it's bedtime and you have a hard time going to bed because you just want to work on the thing. You know, we'll see.
100%. 100%. And that enthusiasm is absolutely infectious, and your kids will benefit from it in the same way that the rest of the community who have, who are familiar with you and your work and all that you do are also impacted in a positive way by it. It's like that outward facing, that broadcasting of passion and enthusiasm is again so important. And that's why, again, kind of coming back to this idea of, it's like, in this moment in time, I feel like there's a constriction, or there's a you can't do that, you can't say that, you can't share those eight positive things in this moment in time. It's like, no, it's actually imperative for you to do
Yeah.
that, because people need to be reminded that these things exist, that they have agency, that they have that same spirit inside of them, even if it is dormant, or even if it's underutilized. You're helping give them permission to exercise
Mhm.
those muscles, and that's a really important gift. I cannot believe that we made it this entire time without digging into music in any real
Oh, yeah.
way. Aside from just glancing on it, I would love to hear what music you think more people should know about.
So it's a bit of a tricky one because I am the world's most nostalgic person and I just listen to the same shit over and over and over again. There's one thing I feel like everyone should know about, which is that you can search Spotify for playlists based on BPM. So that is a fun tool. So I do sprinting at the gym. And so I'm always looking at the 190 BPM lists and finding music based on things that are 190 BPM, which I find to be really helpful.
Amazing.
And then let me look
Amazing.
into my recent liked songs. Oh, I really like the band Bronco, and they're young and touring. They're very fun. Big into them. There's also a band named Fiddler, which is like a kind of drunk teenage band, and I love them a lot right now. I can't play them in the car with my kids because they curse too much. But no, I just listen to the same tired music over and over again.
Yeah, that's not
So
true. That's not true.
I'm a
You
creature of
you
habit.
are, well, I think we all are, and there's definitely, back to those neural canyons. There's a lot of science that backs that stuff up. Why we kind of fall into those rhythms. But I would give yourself more credit based on our other conversations. Your finger on the pulse more than most. So all right, well, cool. Any like last things you wanna plug? Where could people find you? And
Well, you should definitely sign up at studioworks.app for our new thing. We're still pre-launch. And then the community, if you don't care about invoicing software and stuff, is studioworks.community. And then I always have kids
is that
books
free
to.
to anybody?
Oh yeah, it's
Okay.
free to students and it's free to StudioWorks members. And so right now you can sign up for free for StudioWorks and then get a free like into the community. But then once we actually release the invoicing software, you'll be paying for invoicing software, but have free community. And then I always have new our kids books to chill. Ooh, I do have something. Let me go off screen for a second. Two things. This book came out not that long ago. My first book of fancy letters. My camera doesn't want to focus on it, but there it is. That one's a
Yay.
good one. And then this is new. I have an updated version of my in progress book, which is now a thick boy because I added almost 90 pages to it. And so
Thick
this is on
boys.
pre-order right now and it comes out in May. So you should get this because I'm proud of it. And it turned out really good.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, that's awesome. Well, we're gonna have to do this again sometime. I thank you so much for coming on the show. You're one of the first people that I'm talking to, so really appreciate it. And yeah, keep doing your thing, putting out the positive vibes in the world, and raising those kiddos.
All day, every day.